Amidst the big concerns surrounding the AAA games industry, a topic which I regrettably stoked the flames of in a recent video, it's always good to remember that games can come in all shapes and sizes. So to that end, I'd like to promote some new projects from small and independent developers. This week saw the return of Steam Next Fest, Valve's downloadable E3 conference for upcoming releases. With a plethora of playable demos to pass through, counting in the thousands this time round, you might be asking which demos are not only worth your attention, but what deserve your cash on full release. Granted, it's more likely you probably asked that at the beginning of the week, but after spending the past 7 days dissecting Suicide Squad, I'm back to present some rapid-fire recommendations from Next Fest of February 2024. Although it might be a little late to play these demos now, I want to make a case for why all of these should be worth checking out when they hit a full release. So without further ado, here are my top picks. In Pacific Drive, you'll embark on a perilous journey that seamlessly blends My Summer Car with Stalker, set against the backdrop of the Pacific Northwest. Literally thrown into a deadly disarray in the game's opening moments, you'll navigate through randomly generated dimensional schisms to scavenge for survival. Parts are most immediately used to enhance and repair your jalopy, but there's also a long-term goal of fortifying your home base and potentially finding a road back to reality. Typical survival game fare, then. But what gives Pacific Drive an edge is that relationship between you and your new set of wheels. There's an appreciable friction here that's usually glossed over in other driving games, from having to put on the parking brake to keep your car from rolling, toggling the engine on and off to conserve power, and even handling the wipers and lights. It's those small details that make the car feel more like a real-world object, where your first-person perspective sits inside the cockpit, looking at widgets on the dashboard and the world outside your windshield. As a result, you get heavily invested in taking care of your car. Or at least I did. Doing everything from swapping out busted out panels to giving it a fresh paint job and patching it up with putty. A significant portion of my demo was dedicated to me crafting new components for the car, despite my awareness that these modifications would not persist in a new game. It helps that Pacific Drive goes further to distinguish itself from most roguelike survival experiences then. These randomly generated excursions are robust enough to satisfy hamming a car, and despite maintaining a linear and focused narrative, they offer substantial opportunities for exploration. It's complete embracement of these three-dimensional spaces, and despite these zones being so hostile, you do want to take scenic drives through them. It helps that even in an early state, the game runs very well on my 4-year-old PC. PD's art direction splits the difference between realism and readability, riffing on a similar look to Valve's Half-Life games. In fact, the contrast between alien structures with tranquil forests evokes the look of the later adventures of Gordon and Alex. Not a bad thing, in my opinion. Pacific Drive is something I'm excited to see develop further. It holds the potential to become the first survival game to keep my interest going since Minecraft. Granted, for the time I'm likely to put into it, I imagine it will mostly be channeling my inner boomer by working away in the garage of my brand new, beaten up Lemon. Mullet Mad Jack is a first-person satire for the Twitch generation. Set in an anarchistic, anime-infused cyberpunk future, you play as a freelance mercenary enlist to save the princess of streaming. Your lifeblood hinges on 15 seconds of fleeting fame, and to stay alive, you have to impress an audience of attention-deficit maniacs. How's that for a subtle allegory? MMJ has emerged as one of the standout successes from this Next Fest, and for good reason. It's a first-person shooter that makes an incredible first impression, boasting an art direction that prioritizes maximum readability over subtlety, embracing an unabashedly trashy aesthetic, and proudly wearing its influences from the likes of Duke Nukem and Hotline Miami. Mad Jack becomes a vibrant celebration of the flamboyant and macabre. What sets it apart is that this celebration isn't merely superficial, it permeates the very essence of the game. Mad Jack is singularly dedicated to its 15-second speedrun credentials. Its levels, resembling winding dungeons, maintain a linear focus, ensuring that every door kicked through propels you closer to the ultimate goal. Each new level of the skyscraper is an unrelenting sprint forward, tearing through cybergore mooks with your feet and firearms, and sliding through vents like a rocket-powered John McClane. And that's what I love about Mullet Mad Jack, its unabashedly arcade-style reinterpretation of the Die Hard premise, where a lone hero is trapped in a location with an overwhelming number of guards. Similar to John McClane's need to adapt on the fly for survival, you too are compelled to continually alter your tactics. At the conclusion of each level, upgrades make their entrance, injecting a dash of roguelite enhancements that provide a recurring element of strategic evolution. Whether you opt to use upgrades to build the swiftest or most resilient mercenary, or, like myself, experiment with various weapons, the game constantly invites you to refine your approach. All the while, you need to diversify your combat approach to stay alive. In that respect, it's a little like editing a YouTube video, where you're constantly shifting to different cuts to keep an audience entertained. Like I said, subtle allegory. Among the Next Fest demos, Mullet Mad Jack stands out with one of the most thoroughly developed identities. Already, my recommendation is a drop in the ocean compared to the torrents of praise that the demo has already received from the gaming elite, but I'd like to stress that there's more than meets the eye here. Beyond being just a shooter with a visually striking aesthetic, this is a combination of Daytona USA and Doom I've been hoping someone would attempt again since Bizarre Creations' The Club. How gratifying it is then to see that come out of the vibrant indie scene, with an identity all of its own. If you're looking for something a little slower and more methodical than Mullet Mad Jack, fortunately there's another incredibly stylish shooter that could be exactly what you're looking for. Children of the Sun casts you as a young woman on a quest for vengeance after her parents murdered by a cult. Picking up a high-powered sniper rifle, you'll go on a quest to dismantle the organization one round at a time. The game could be aptly characterized as a sniper puzzle. Unnecessary elements of the FPS are completely stripped out, focusing entirely on the setup and taking the shot. Similar to Suda51's Killer 7, your character navigates the outside of an arena along a predefined path, like a coyote circling a camp to plan its attack. Then, going into the sniper's scope, you mark your enemies like Far Cry to keep track on where they are in the environment. While this sounds like a simplified but stylized interpretation of the sniper missions found in Hitman, Children of the Sun introduces a captivating twist. Upon successfully connecting a shot with a target, you gain the ability to alter the bullet's trajectory from that point, allowing for a seamless chain into another target. A masterful maneuver, analogous to navigating through an array of meticulously placed and decidedly gory pins. The enemies themselves follow predictable patrol patterns that facilitate the setup of elaborate chains. Encouraging more playful kills, you can even set off gas tanks in cars to take out multiple adversaries at once. The potential of Children of the Sun is evident, and the prospect of additional mechanics being introduced in the future is intriguing. The hint at recharging abilities by targeting specific limbs brings to mind the mechanics of shooting the glowing weak spots on the Heaven Smile in Killer 7, especially in scenarios where shield-using foes are introduced. It has me imagining future boss encounters with novel and intricate means of resolution. Although this demo is initially story light, Children of the Sun's undeniable cool comes out of a captivating aesthetic, splitting the difference between the inspiration of Suda51's games and its own comic book style. It's in that schism that interesting potential sits. Previous games that have riffed on this style usually overcompensate in the storytelling department, but this adventure has the potential to convey a more profound experience through gameplay, transcending the reliance on voice acting and traditional cutscenes. Keeping things lighter and tighter isn't a failure of creativity, but instead something other titles should try to employ, especially for puzzle games like this. Children of the Light then is a celebration of the notion that less is more. In fact, I could see it playing as an incredible iPad game due to the light amount of controller use. It's a gameplay style we don't often get a lot of, and I'm keen to see where this new adventure could go in a full release. The hints of new mechanics later in the demo certainly opens the doors for more brain-teasing sniper puzzles. My hope is just that the developers retain the essence of this game's current streamlined successes, and resist the temptation to amplify the concept further. From the creators of Snipperclips, Haunt the House, and the decline of video gaming flash cartoons on Newgrounds, Crow Country emerges as a compelling new entry into the canon of survival horror. While the developer's track record of delivering compact yet high-quality games immediately put the title on my radar, it's this outing's unique hook that has made it one of my most eagerly anticipated releases of the year. At a glance, Crow Country evokes the aesthetics of pre-rendered environments that were the hallmarks of early PS1 horror titles, such as Resident Evil and Parasite Eve. The player's characters, sculpted with chunky polygons reminiscent of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, stands in stark contrast against the intricately detailed backgrounds that capture the essence of early CG renders. However, the true magic happens when you manipulate the right control stick. allowing you to dynamically rotate these environments in a full 360 degrees. Compared to most developers recreating the look of older horror games, SBF Games have gone a step further in their recreation by having these environments meticulously rendered in real time. Not only does this gimmick add a layer of sophistication to the entire concept, but it also imparts a distinctively toy box ambience. It feels like you're gazing into a chilling diorama, perfectly complementing the haunted amusement park theme. Perhaps taking inspiration from their Snipperclip publishers, Crow Country achieves a similar feat to newer Nintendo games that have leveraged the look of realistic materials to create a connection with players, but here it's using the antiquities of older software rendering to evoke a nostalgic sensation. It's a novel horror game then, down to its setting and playfulness. Drawing parallels to the Resident Evil series, Crow Country demands precision shooting, and the fully 3D world requires players to aim without the crutch of spotty game assistance. The tension escalates as the presentation offers a constant higher view, forcing players to gauge depth to protect their puppet-like playable character. It's a survival horror game by way of a parlor game. In fact, many of the demos included puzzles include some target shooting in order to open the way ahead. Meanwhile, the classic survival horror staples are seamlessly integrated in, tasking players with saving individuals while progressively unraveling layers of the mystery and acquiring keys to unlock new areas. The enemy designs are appropriately ghoulish, and the tone is fittingly macabre, yet the developers inject a delightful sense of playfulness into the concept. Vending machines on hit dispense dozens of cans, and low poly objects exhibit a charming squash and stretch animation. Rarely does a blend of cute and creepy work so well, something worth applauding Crow Country for. While the concept of Crow Country may not be entirely groundbreaking, its presentation and how it seamlessly integrates with standard survival horror mechanics give it a distinct edge in a saturated market. It not only injects a fresh perspective into a well-trodden genre, but also introduces a visual approach that holds great potential for broader adoption. One can't help but imagine the prospect of a Metal Gear title combining the camera finesse of Phantom Pain with a nostalgic presentation and graphics reminiscent of Solid 1. I eagerly await taking another trip deeper into the depths of Crow Country then, and seeing what further the team at SBF Games can achieve with their new take on survival horror. Next first was on shorter dungeon crawling games inspired by the classics, although few managed to truly capture my attention. While the genre exudes many warm and fuzzy memories for many, I don't have much affinity for them. To pique my interest then, any new entry to the genre needs to offer some kind of distinctive hook to grab me in, even if it's one that initially appears completely bonkers. Welcome then to Cryptmaster, or as I like to call it, typing of the dead in a dungeon crawler. Essentially, besides maneuvering with the directional keys, the exclusive mode of interaction within this dungeon involves entering commands through typing. However, this isn't aimed at an unseen game engine, but rather towards a consistently present and somewhat edgy storyteller. Picture a crypt keeper of sorts with whom you can interact via the keyboard, eliciting some remarkably witty responses. The success of games that demand written inputs largely depends on the sophistication of their responses, and so far, Crypt Keeper's demo has been a delightful revelation with its clever and intelligent comebacks. Whether it's the simplicity of typing in playful profanities and facing consequences for it, or engaging in banter with a massive door that offers witty puns in response to your potential retorts, the overall experience is brimming with delightful surprises. Beyond these fun interactable, Cryptmaster's gameplay revolves around continuous text input. Similar to a classic dungeon crawler, you assemble a party of 4, each endowed with unique abilities. The thing is though, at the game's outset, these abilities remain a mystery, as you have to figure out what they are by typing them in. Some abilities are straightforward enough to figure out, such as jab from a rogue or boot from a barbarian, but the game provides clues akin to Scrabble tiles to unravel the rest. Finding chests in the dungeon initiates a guessing game where players can prompt the Crypt Keeper to describe the contents based on look, taste and touch, facilitating the deduction of what's inside. The reward then isn't the item itself, but rather the letters forming the word that fills in gaps regarding your player's abilities, much like making a sentence on Wheel of Fortune. As a result, players can decipher their character's attacks through educated guesses or by acquiring letters from loot. While combat, a staple of the genre, lacks intrigue, the typing of the dead element does manage to spice things up just a bit. There's even enemies that can block the use of particular letters, adding a challenge to what you can and can't say during battle. It's fortunate then that the presentation of Cryptmaster is exceptionally polished, featuring a 3D world rendered in scratchy black and white illustrations, reminiscent of old OSR dungeon crawling materials. Similar to Daniel Mullins' 2021 game Inscription, a fully voice-acted Lich serves as your constant companion and narrator, adding a layer of immersion to the experience. The dungeon also hosts various entities, contributing to the overall atmosphere. The somewhat sardonic humour adds an enjoyable touch, fitting of a game where you can type anything in and get an appropriate response. It remains uncertain though how long the gimmick of Cryptmaster can sustain an entire game, and what the developers have in mind for future utilization. Although playable with a controller, I'm not exactly sure why you would play Cryptmaster without a keyboard, but the inclusion of voice input was a nice touch, although I didn't get to try it out during my demo. Overall, Cryptmaster feels like a unique fusion of two distinct adventure game types, the text-based adventure and the dungeon crawler, resulting in a compelling combination that I'm nonetheless interested in digging more into. Certainly, the possibility of speedrunning the game by noting down power words from previous runs raises an intriguing prospect for later ventures. Recommended to me by Harry from the channel Video Games Are Bad, Zero Division falls into the category of deck-building roguelikes, a genre I admittedly have very little vested interest in. As a result, I absolutely could not tell you what the unique selling point of Zero Division is. It has a cool cyberpunk art style, I suppose, but that's kind of it. Considering this might be someone's first real exposure to the genre, as it was for me, I can't make a recommendation. Zero Division seems too reliant on genre tropes, assuming players can grasp intricacies that require explicit explanation and alienating symbolism. As I spoke about in my video on Slipways, I've been on the lookout for a deck builder roguelite that simplifies the more intricate elements, aiming for a more accessible and less serious experience. Surprisingly, the perfect match turned out to be Balatro, recommended by friend of the channel Sputnik34 and subsequently my top pick amongst all the games featured in NextFest. Balatro has actually been in the hands of a few streamers before NextFest, but now that it's been released for a wider audience, it's receiving well-deserved coverage. Thanks to video makers like Northern Lion, it's on track to become a phenomenon akin to Super Auto Pets. The rules of Balatro are straightforward, utilising a standard deck of 52 cards and poker rules for players to start constructing high scores. Hands are graded differently, with pairs yielding lower payouts than flushes or full houses, but the mayhem of Balatro begins with the introduction of extensive modifiers and their synergies, resulting in colossal combos. Unlike a regular deck of 52, there's 150 jokers in the deck, each contributing random multipliers to your plays based on factors like number of diamonds in a hand or the parity of numbers. Balatro then offers a wealth of strategic possibilities. Additionally, there are arcanas to modify the deck and astral cards that enhance the strength of particular poker hands. In a particularly successful game, I exploited the Fool's Arcana's loophole to duplicate multiple Pluto cards, maximizing the combo bonuses for a seemingly weak 2-pair, which ended up carrying me through all 5 rounds of games with absolutely colossal multipliers and payouts. As I'm saying this, I can already envision the runs I could embark on in a full version of Balatro, whether honing in on specific synergies or challenging myself to craft more intricate hands for greater rewards. I find myself engaged in ways I never truly cared for in previous roguelike games. Unlike Hades, where I was captivated by the feel of its action RPG combat and Supergiant's distinctive style, Balatro has opened my eyes to the allure of the genre. It reveals that within the concoction of random elements lies seemingly boundless potential for diverse approaches. By eschewing fantasy or sci-fi elements and focusing on the familiar language of poker, it has managed to break through. Balatro also presents an exceptionally stylish aesthetic, adopting a haunted video poker appearance that skillfully navigates the boundary between oddity and horror. While it doesn't plunge into the depths of Inscription's darkness, it injects vibrancy into what could have been an otherwise ordinary game. The graphical user interface, with its emphasis on simple shapes and colours, elevates elements like holofoil cards, making them shimmer dynamically as you maneuver the mouse around these flat objects in 3D space. The soundtrack seamlessly complements the mood, offering elevated jazz with a haunted computer twist, and is something you can listen to for hours without tiring. The game isn't above having fun with the presentation also, with the initial demo tutorial guided by a sentient Joker card, adding a delightful touch to the learning process. The Jokers themselves are visually captivating, and I'd love to own a physical deck featuring all the distinctive cards from Balatro, even if an electronic and real-world recreation of the game seems impossible. Of all the games featured in Next Fest, this is the one I'm eagerly anticipating to include in my Games of 2024 list. With its release scheduled for February 20th, it won't be long until I can do exactly that. So, those were all my standout choices from Next Fest February 2024, but what about yours? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know which demos have you excited for their eventual fall releases. Until next time, I'm James, and I'll see you all in the next upload.